and ask questions and so forth. This is all about headline writing. So I'm going to kind of keep, you can ask all the questions you want, but try and keep them focused on the headline writing process because we have Q&A sessions for everything else, and I want to make this as complete and thorough as we possibly can. Okay, I'm going to give it just a few minutes for everybody to get in here. Make sure I have my notes. I've also got to turn this in. Okay, let me know when people start coming in. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Um, First, I want to say this is going to be the most comprehensive of the headline training, but it goes hand in hand with the subject and headline training that I gave in the email marketing strategy video. If you have not watched that, you really should watch that. That is filled with a lot of great advice and info on email marketing, but on top of that, on how to model subject lines and headlines and from different sources. But one of the things I want to make very clear is this is a skill that can help you in all kinds of areas of marketing because when you learn how to do this the way that I'm going to teach you, you learn when to use more clickbait, when to use different kinds of headlines for editorial headlines, when to use them for landing pages, what to use for subject lines in emails, and so forth. This also includes titles for blog posts and subjects and things like that because a lot of people think that I'm in training mode, so it doesn't need to pizzazz, it doesn't need to have sizzle to it. That's not necessarily true. You're going to be writing ads for those trainings and for that instruction, and you want to keep people excited about it. So we're going to talk about creating killer headlines today, but I just want you to know that I'm going to cover a few techniques. One main one, and the big difference between the way that I'm going to show you and the way my father taught and the way that other marketing instructor or copywriting instructors teach is when I'm done here, you will be able to just spit out headline after headline after headline. I remember proteges coming to learn from my father, and they would be told to write 100 headlines and basically kind of like peruse the maybe your swipe file would be like the closest thing they got to any kind of training, but just write 100 headlines and keep going till you get better. That does work the more experience you get, but this is a much faster way of doing things. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to teach you here is stuff that actually Agora writers use to keep ahead. Now, the reason I say that is because and you're going to notice this in some of the stuff that I'm going to show in the training. It's really kind of a weird situation because Agora for a long time didn't know that I was the guy behind the kind of copy chiefing one of their biggest promotions because they're one of their copywriters had come to me and asked me for stuff, and I talked about that in the research thing. Well, it's also true that there's a couple other people who have written for Agora. One has moved on, another one's working with them right now, and they're telling me about different techniques that I have taught them that they're like, man, this has been saving my life and helping me get a huge advantage over the other people the other people that they're competing against in that giant direct marketing organization. So Agora doesn't even know that. And by the way, they're also using each of them. I just taught them one small technique, and you're in this program of Halbertizing getting all of them. Okay, so This is, so one I'm teaching headlines to, another one I was teaching bullets to, another one I was teaching research to. So this is very valuable stuff, and let's go ahead and get on with it. And again, I, the value of, teaching you what to do, I think it's a lot easier just to show you how to do it in a way that where you can just start doing it immediately. So I've never given this speech before, not in the detail that I'm about to give it. I've only given it in a snippet, so you're going to get more out of this. But please forgive, the fact that I might have to bounce around or go, oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention this, or by the way, I want to mention that. So be prepared to take notes because maybe not every thought I have is going to be on a slide. Okay, first, let's talk about the elements of a good headline. These are things that you can find in good headlines. You don't need to put every element into the good headline. In fact, with the elements, I'm going to show you what they are, but I'm going to show you what they're, when they're more important than other times. And it doesn't mean that they're all in there in every single headline. So you need to know that. But if you go and look at the, headlines, the most successful headlines and so forth, you're going to see a few of these elements in each of them. In some headlines, you're going to see a lot of the elements in them. Okay. Now, the priority of the elements and how important that is, not the priority in which, you say it in the headline itself, like, which word comes first, but they're based on what customers need to hear in order to buy. So sometimes there's an element, I'll give you examples of these as we go, but there's an element that's not that important to some people because they're buying something. Like, an example is they don't need risk reversal to be reassured, if they're spending, they're buying a pack of gum, okay, because, they know they don't like it. It's a, couple of seconds of, oh, I don't like this, and they spit the gum out. They're not that concerned about it. So it's not something you would waste time putting into a headline that showed that. So in any case, they each will have a different priority, but it's based on, what the market level sophistication of the buyer. It's based on all kinds of stuff, and I'll explain them as I explain each of the elements. Now, these elements come from factoids you get during your research. So you're doing the research and you're finding, oh, I found this really cool story. Oh, there's a fantastic benefit. There's all of this other kind of stuff that you're finding. And one thing can fit in more than one category of the elements that we're looking for that I'm gonna show you about, or excuse me, talk about. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is authority. This is authority, and it also means expertise. It's basically why someone should, buy from you or the company. What makes you specifically someone to trust for this? So, if it's a wrinkle cream, are you a plastic surgeon? Okay, from Beverly Hills. Are you are you an award-winning, screenwriter who's, because when it comes to teaching people how to write screenplays, what's the authority or expertise that makes people believe that they should listen to you? That's an important part. Okay, and this is more important when there's lots of competition. So there's a lot of people teaching people how to write copy. Why should you listen to Bond Halbert? Okay, there's a lot of people who are, when there's nobody else doing this, you don't need more authority, okay, in showing people how to do it. When they have those in, water jet ski things that, help you fly above the water and everything like that. There's not a lot of competition. There's probably one in every water port city. So you don't need a lot of authority in your headlines about this, okay? But so it's more important when there's a lot of competition in whatever it is you're selling or offering, okay? And it's also more important when the cost of failure is serious, because that's when you really want an expert. I mean, it's very critical when when you try and do this. The cost of failure. Now, it doesn't have to be life-threatening. It could be that it's a serious waste of time or money. It could be something that's life-threatening or dangerous if you don't do it right. So I mean, it'd be nice if I was not the kind of person to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, but if I was into parachuting, I would want an instructor with over 10,000 jumps to his belt. And more importantly, I'd like one that had, you know, that whose students who's trained 10,000 jumps under the bed with zero accidents. So, the authority is also more important when there's a serious downside to failing. Okay, another element that we're gonna, and I'm gonna show you like a matrix, and we're going to actually upload a form that's gonna show you how to put this all together in a little later. But another element is that it should be something newsy. What makes this offer special or timely right now? What's different about it? Like it wouldn't have been available a year ago or by anybody else. And this often comes from the stories in your research, like the story of the company and or how the product was developed, you know, because it was just recently done. It was new invention, that kind of thing. And being newsy is a very good thing. Oftentimes, when I'm doing this, you're going to see I like to use words that are in the present progressive. That means they end in ing. It's something that is going on. The reason that's important is you're trying to trigger the human instinct. When our human instinct was something was moving, was we either should probably be alert and run away from it or run after it because it was something like food, like an animal for food that we were going after. And you want to make I learned this from the book Pitch Anything, which is a great book, and it's about creating it's the situation where there's an ongoing, actually comes from a lot of this, there's a lot of newsy like information that's in an opportunity that's happening, that's converged to create an opportunity, and you have the feeling that you better jump on it right away because the train is moving and pulling out of the station. Okay, so something happening is something better. It's more powerful to say um, that somebody is doing something than somebody did something. So it's more powerful to say that you are revealing something than it is to say that you have revealed something, because then it sounds like, okay, I can get that anytime. It's already out there. I want to be there when it's being revealed. It's kind of like, wanting to watch something and, one of the people jump the Grand Canyon live versus wanting to watch them on the replay. So if you say Evel Knievel's jumping the Grand Canyon on a motorcycle this weekend, it's much more exciting than Evel Knievel jumped the Grand Canyon last weekend. Okay, so that's an important part about being newsy, but it's important in the spectrum or the thought pattern of the prospect thinking, okay, I want to be, this is happening now. This is why it's different. This is why I haven't seen it before. Okay, and so this is always important for intention. This part of the headlines help give you and grip attention. Okay. Okay, another one is benefit. You hear this a lot, that each of these headlines should have a benefit to them, and it can be a benefit that is implied. It can be a benefit that is specifically stated that So, but the things that and they, what is the benefit to the customer? But this is often comes from your USP, your unique selling proposition. Why buy from you? That's what USP is really about. What makes your offer a better deal than the others? Is it, is what you're doing work faster, cheaper? Is what you do more effective? Does it give you better, as John Carlton would call it, bragging rights? Does it, what is the huge benefit or the bigger benefit that you provide and your offer provides that other people don't do that's unique? This is most important when the benefit is not obvious. So, teaching people to write effective Facebook ads is a benefit that is obvious. Teaching people how to, when you're selling bidets, teaching the people, you have to say more specifically to save thousands of dollars on toilet paper and be more environmentally friendly. Okay. Some benefits are more obvious than others. But the other thing I want you to think about is the benefit to the benefit. Okay, so sometimes you have to explain that out. This one will help you. This system will help you landscape your garden faster with less money. but still look so good. And the benefit being, and you'll be the envy of the neighborhood. Okay, or it will, and this raises the value of the curb appeal and the value of your property. Okay, the benefit of that benefit. Sometimes that's something that you want to add in there. Okay. Another element is curiosity. Okay, this is something you hint at what they will discover reading or watching your marketing. It's really like they're this is what they kind of thinking that they're going to get by reading the article or watching your promotion. And it's most important when using a medium where there's a lot of businesses that are competing for the attention. Okay, and so if you're in a newspaper situation and you're the only engine steam cleaning service, the curiosity isn't nearly as important when you are competing for everybody's attention. And this is also great for gripping and holding people's attention and making them start reading. So it's, and if you talk to most copywriting trainers, the first thing they're going to say is, your headline needs to have benefit and curiosity. And they kind of stop right there. They don't go on as far as we're going to go. Okay, another one that I almost always want to add, not always, but most of the time, is numbers. Numbers it makes claims feel more real or timely. And by numbers, I mean any numbers, dates. Right now, the one that I think is important for people to use is if you're talking about money making opportunities, you're talking about in late 2020. So that means, if somebody says how to make money online, people are wondering if that's still good. So in late 2020 makes it something that is, that's more relevant and helps handle an objection right away. So I like that time. I like that number right now specifically. But if you say, I've used this system and on our, I've done the numbers and this brings in, last month this brought in $4,000. It's a good number. It's specific. That's more, that's better than saying it brought me in extra income. The more specific the number is, the better. If you said $4,342.76, that sounds so real because it's a very specific number, and they're like, okay, he actually calculated that out and figured that number out. And this, by the way, is true in a lot of these things I'm going to teach you are true in all of your marketing. So throughout the whole concept, if somebody gives you a number, you don't want about $4,000. You want to know very specific information. It makes the stories that you tell real if they have stories in the numbers. But it can be weights, it can be times, it can be numbers of features, numbers of benefits. It can be all numbers from everywhere. I taught you that in the research video. Pay attention to whenever you see numbers. You have a sheet that's just for those factoids that involve numbers. Okay, this is of course more important when you need to be believed. When the need to be believed is great. Okay. Another thing that you want to add sometimes is the sense of urgency in the headline. A lot of people are thinking you only wait for that to be the offer. But sometimes you need that sense of urgency to make them feel like they better read this or they're going to be missing out on something. So it makes the prospect feel like they better watch or read the sales message or they're missing out in general. And that this is most important when the people feel the solution is not an emergency. So it's not an emergency that I join a weight loss program right away. Well, it becomes an emergency if it looks like there's something really cool and new happening, but it might not be around and that offer might be going away. So if something is an emergency for somebody, you don't need that much of a sense of urgency. But if they don't feel like the solution is an emergency situation, you want to add a sense of urgency if you can into the headline. Okay. Targeted is a lot of people forget this one. It's a very basic one, and it's calling out exactly who should be paying attention to the offer. So are you targeting homeowners? Are you targeting home renters? Are you targeting people who who live in a specific area? The example I like to give for this, and this adds a lot more power to the attention grabbing part. My dad taught me this is, if I turned around and I said, hey, And I've used this example with people. I'll say, where do you live? And they'll say something like, I live in LA. So if I say something that everybody in California needs to know, who owns property in California needs to know, it's a little bit of attention gathering. If I say anything, everything that anybody who owns something, everybody who owns property in Los Angeles needs to know, there's more attention to that. If I say something for everybody who owns property in Hollywood needs to know, you got my attention a lot greater. If I say something everybody in Hollywood who owns a 3-bedroom home needs to know, you definitely have my attention. And if you said something everybody who lives on Genesee in a 3-bedroom home on Genesee needs to know, I cannot not read that. So the more specific you are in targeting your buyers, the more you're going to grab their attention. And when you have more power to do this than you ever did before, because you can specifically call out everybody who lives in this zip code needs to know why this zip code is being affected more than the national average. You can, because online digitally, you can do that in a way where with print you couldn't do that before. Print, you used to be able, you'd run an ad, it went out to everybody who read that paper, and in LA it covered many zip codes. Okay, but targeting is important when trying to filter out the non-buyers as well. So when you're online and you're saying, this is a course that's for veteran copywriters, and you call it out for veteran copywriters, people who are just small businesses don't think of themselves as veteran copywriters, so they'll pass on it, right? And that saves you money because they're not clicking on it. That's an important part of maximizing. You're in the number business, and so you want to maximize attention from the right prospects but also you want to, I don't know what's the exact word, but you want to dissuade the wrong prospects from clicking, because that costs you money and changes the effectiveness of your campaign. And you can do that in the headlines, as long as they're targeting and calling out the right people. Sometimes the benefit itself is calling out the right people. Like I said, some of these elements cover, like you'll say one thing and it covers a couple things. Another element that can be in the headline is risk reversal. Sometimes the risk reversal is so good that it becomes the headline. It is the only tax service that's guaranteed to go over your taxes, and if they don't save you extra money, they'll give you $100. It could be, the only company in this industry offering a double your money back guarantee. But the risk reversal is why the customer needs to feel safe buying. Okay, so it's most important when the price makes a buying decision harder and trust is a factor, because what people are buying is an expensive, large purchase for them. Okay, vehicles. So one of the first things you saw happen after the coronavirus hit was vehicle companies saying, hey, you can buy this company and you can return it in much longer, if you're really unsatisfied and you can't pay for it or whatever, we'll take it back in like 90 days. They started increasing the risk reversal in the offer, and that became the headline. So you want to think about that as far as, how much, and again, this is how much the price, this is based on the target. So, millionaires, needing to buy an A to B get around car for a kid, it's not as nearly as important as somebody who's making that purchase and it's their first, they've never been able to afford a new car before and it's their first new car purchase. That, you've heard me talk about that in terms of how much how long your copy should be, that it needs to be, you need to do longer and give more information to make them feel safe buying. The same thing is true with risk reversal. They need more risk reversal, the harder it is. There's also a trust factor. If trust is a factor, then the risk reversal is good. I don't know about this situation, if this is a good one. The more lengths you want to go towards adding risk reversal. And we'll talk about that in a different training, about the different things you can do besides just using the word guarantee. Okay, proof. Any evidence your claims are real. that will be good. Like, there's, we did 675 split tests, and we've proven that, this new headline writing system we have outproduces, anything else on the market. Proof is something and makes that more believable, helps add interest. It's most important when the claim is very hard to believe. That can actually sometimes be handled, side note here, in an image. Like you're showing a certified image from an accounting document or something like that that shows that you did it. You'll see a lot of marketers doing this online with showing their numbers of their earnings per sale and how much money they took in a day and stuff like that. But proof is something that's important to, that will help get people to, if you're making a claim that's hard to believe, believable. And again, this depends on like who you are and what kind of authority you are. It's a lot harder to believe that somebody brand new to copywriting came in and knocked it out of the park than somebody who's got a very good reputation and stuff like that. It's harder to believe that, a someone in their backyard or in their garage came up with a miracle wrinkle cream than it is to believe that a Beverly Hills dermatologist did that type of thing. So, but the harder the claim is to believe, and that can be based on other factors, the more important proof is. Okay, here are all the elements that I've listed, and I'm sure there will be others that people come up with. Authority, newsy, benefit slash USP, curiosity, numbers, urgency, targeted, risk reversal, and proof. Now, what I think you should do, which is what I do, some facts can be in more than one category. Now, here's a basic yet effective headline. This is just three of these. Authority, doing something newsy, which gives benefit. Okay. The plastic surgeon is bringing, Hollywood plastic surgeon is bringing new wrinkle formula to America for the first time ever. That's got a benefit. It's got, doing something newsy. It's an authority. Very basic headline. It is very effective. Okay. So that is right there, a headline kind of system template, if you want to call it, and so forth, that will work. But we're going to go a little deeper than that. What you should do, and we're going to upload into the files section a table that's like this, except it'll be white so that you can write on it. I like to put these up here. They're not in a very specific order. Now, the reason these are different sizes and fonts is to make sure that they fit in here and stuff like that. But what you want to do is you have more than one things that list you as an authority. You have more than several opportunities to say something is newsy. Benefits, oftentimes this can go down several pages. Curiosity, numbers, you're pulling them in from your research and from what you know about the product that you're offering. Okay. And so some of these will have two things. Some of these will have four, some will have a couple pages of it, and you narrow it down. So sometimes what you want to do is actually just pull out a pad of paper and write one whole page of benefits that you could be listing in here. You might want to narrow it down to a few, or you could just make a really, really long table. But this is what you want to then do. Now, this isn't the order. This isn't the order that you're always doing. Authority, doing newsy, benefit, curiosity, numbers, and urgency. That's not the order. What we're doing is trying to decide which elements could go into a headline that makes things work. So I did one. This is a basic mock-up. And again, I have benefits the galore for this. So we're pretending that this is about selling or writing copy for the Halbertizing group itself, right? And so the authority is Gary Halbert's superstar protege, A-list copywriter, top copy instructor, first family of copy, sons of GOAT. That's greatest of all time. Now, this is not where I'm putting in exactly how I would word it. This is not. This is just putting in this is the way, this is the type of authority I could claim. This is the type of benefits I could claim, and so forth. It does not mean that's the final words that I'm going to be mixing and matching and putting together. Now, what you want to do is make sure that, as Kevin and I always say, you write dream copy. You want to write the ultimate thing you'd like to be able to say and then back it off to what you can legally say. And your clients are going to, when you back it off to just what is legal to say, they're still, if you're lucky, going to feel nervous about running it, because they're going to say, man, that you're making me sound really, really good here. I don't know if I want to do that. And this case, I'm the client and I'm going to resemble that person who's not so son of it. I actually personally like Top Copy Instructor. So that's the one I'm going to choose here. But that doesn't mean I'm stuck with that or I'm even going to use it, because I might use the other ones. Um, and there is, it's just because I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not so egotistical that I want to go around making huge gigantic claims out of myself. I do feel very strongly and quite easily that I'm a Top Copy Instructor. I teach people who are teaching other people. My stuff gets, you know stolen, and I see other people pulling it off out as though it's theirs. Okay, so Newsy is like revealing the first coaching program that we ever created. We created it's a brand new program, training program, hidden lessons that were found. And some of these, what I'm going to be teaching you, are hidden lessons I found in Gary Halbert ads, because I'd go back and look at them and see stuff in them, and being trained to think like him, Kevin and I can recognize things that other people don't see and know exactly what was going through our father's brain. Okay, the benefits are huge. I'm just, because I'm just doing this as a lesson, that I'm teaching you to write copy faster. While everybody else was driving around in their cars trying to think of headlines, this system is going to, when you see when I'm done, is going to show you can just rip them out. So when it says write 100 headlines, you're not going to have a problem doing that. It's also, when you're done with the course, it's a fast track to writing A-level copy. Okay, so it's the fast track to the A-list. You will write better copy than most professionals. And again, you see how when I say than a lot of high-paid professionals, this is stuff that you would add in the headline. I'm just writing, notes onto what are the different benefits that we could do. And you can have more than one. I could say A-list copywriter and Top Copy Instructor is revealing for the first time a brand new coaching program that shows you how to make, how to get to, which was allowing students to putting students on the fast track to the A list, right? Writing better, more effective copy, and so forth. So just because there's one element doesn't mean it only has to show up once. The curiosity, these are brand new tricks, recently developed techniques, behind the scenes. These are Gary Halbert's things, never seen before. I don't know why I had that there the whole time. Okay, numbers, late 2020, 13 lessons, 42 years in direct response. This is just, those are numbers that are all, and by the way, this is all true. Urgency, there's a small batch of people that we're teaching. We're not going to teach more people, because, we're going to start going into personal help, and we're going to start going into going over the copy and spending more time doing the coaching, so that when you're showing us your headlines and you're showing us your bullets and you're showing us your stories, we're showing you how to punch it up and make it better, and teaching all that. That's going to be more time consuming than just the lessons we've been creating so far. That is the game plan. Okay, never doing this again. That is, I'm not sure if that's true, but that might very well be true, because, I really like to do things. I like to, that are fun and exciting. I like to do them once, maybe a couple times, and then I move on. It's the reason that you don't see me going around and giving 15 times giving the same speech. And even if I do give the same speech, I've given a couple times. I think I've only given one speech 3 or 4 times. I always add something new to it. So I might not do this again. Limited to 400, and it's already half full. Targeted. Now, these are who do I want to go after? Because I could go after copywriters. I could go after business owners who need to write good ads. I could just go after, in general, online marketers. Okay, because and I could tailor and customize this. So one of the things that you do want to quickly figure out is who's your market and who you're going to go after. Okay, risk reversal. I can say guaranteed to work, or money back or whatever, but I'm not doing that, because, you're getting an incredible amount of value every month for a very small amount of money. But I could say the first training is free, which that research video was, or each video is worth the whole training. I don't need that much risk reversal, because the amount you paid to be in this group is not so much where you're, where the risk of failure is so great. Okay, if this was a huge amount of time investment and this was a huge amount of money, then I would go into much more risk reversal. Proof. The proof is I've got Agora writers using these tips and tricks. The research video alone is legendary. There are people who are long-term copywriters. Even my father's proteges are like, "Oh, wow, that was really good." I can't imagine. I mean, I've never heard people explain how to choose the stories based on market sophistication and other stuff. Um, this I think I meant to say Agora's, unknown secret weapon or whatever, but that's just a few of them. I could go off with lots of proof. The proof is also I've beaten my dad's records with emails. There's all kinds of stuff that Kevin and I have done that would list as proof, but this is just to give you a concept of basically put it all in this table, put the different factors in, and then select the ones that you think are, and highlight the ones, and you're going to write different ones. So this is how this ended up. um, this was for, okay, then you can do it faster. um, oh, okay, so the member results, the members are already receiving results. I've seen several people post and say, "Oh man, I tried what you did. It worked just like a charm. These things that you said were going to happen happened exactly as you said they were going to," and stuff like that. This one, I created a different table for, in a lot. And this, by the way, is something you will do in a lot of your businesses where the authority that you're working with doesn't change very much. Okay. Um, but and I but sometimes the product that you're doing is different. So if, let's suppose I was doing a piece just on the headline training video, and I'm writing copy just for that, I might want to sit down and time it and say, show you how to write, 17 headlines as fast as you can actually write them. You know, up to 72 headlines as fast as you can write them. Or I could even say numbers and say write 43 headlines in an hour, whatever. But the point is, a lot of the times when you're going for a different product or a different offer, some of the information is going to be the same. Sometimes it's going to be different because this one we're offering a bigger risk reversal. This one has got a different set of benefits and so forth. Okay. So coming out from this, and you'll see these elements in here, and I'm going to go through several of them. Gary Halbert's Sons revealing 13 brand new tricks guaranteed to have you writing A-level copy by the end of 2020. But better hurry as price is set to double and members are already seeing big wins. Okay, now when you take copy, now I'm not done showing you a bunch of stuff here. One of the things that you're doing is if the copy is really long, you can take the one that you think is not as powerful and you move it up into what I call the lead-in copy. So this is the same headline. Members are already seeing big wins up here at the top. Gary Halbert's Sons are revealing 13 brand new tricks guaranteed to have anyone writing A-level copy by the end of 2020. Now I say by the end. When it comes to sub headlines for brevity, you do not need to, you can leave words like the out. It's not going to be a major game changer, and it makes things fit well. And that is actually left out on purpose. Okay. But that's one. Even the world's biggest advertisers are stealing his tricks. Top copy instructors' revolutionary new techniques are slashing years off the time it takes to create record-breaking Facebook ads. Now, slashing years off of this is going back to that power word exercise I gave you guys. And I said, go create your own list of power words because I like that. Okay. And so, instead of cutting, I wrote slashing because I thought that was a better line. These can all also still be improved. Family tradition of copywriting breakthroughs continue. I messed that up. It should be breakthrough continues or breakthroughs continue. Halbert Brothers are proving they can teach anyone how to pump out more effective promotions than top ad agencies. Now, again, remember, my dad said write 100. So what you're doing is you're writing a whole bunch, and then you're taking your 3 favorite. New system from Copywriting Rockstar reveals the 13 simple tricks anyone can use to beat top ad agencies, even if you failed high school English. That sounds very John Carlton-ish, but it's still good. Each training gives copywriting a huge advantage over seasoned pros. You remember when I put that in before? The private program copywriters inside America's largest direct response company are secretly using to stay ahead of their peers in the most competitive marketing environment on earth. True. And do not worry. I was training and showing this to my daughter and my son, and they're like, well, don't you think that's kind of long? And then I showed them other successful ads and how long those headlines could be. And I've seen them with, more than 30 words. Okay, so but the lesson is you see how these can expand and contract. You're not done massaging it. And once you get down to the three that you want to use, the three main, hooks and stuff like that, you can adjust them. Good news for online advertisers. 13 hidden lessons discovered in Gary Halbert ads are giving new and veteran advertisers an unfair advantage with Facebook ads. Facebook ads would be I'm targeting Facebook advertisers, right? A lot of people think I'm targeting with the new and the veteran advertisers. It's actually the Facebook advertisers that I'd be going after. And then I'd be running it with Google display advertisers. And it's, a veteran ad man just can't keep up. A-list copywriters are being humiliated by copy cubs with zero experience using 13 hidden lessons discovered in Gary Halbert ads to write more effective ads faster. I'd like an explanation on that, Mark. I'd put an exclamation mark on that. Okay, now that's the last of the headlines that I want to show you. What I want to then explain to you is, let's suppose that you're stuck with kind of figuring out how to write this. Now, it's just like the subject line trick. Once you use that subject line trick, you are then going to, if you use it often enough, you start thinking in that kind of clickbait style. And once you start writing these things, you start like, okay, yeah, this number would be great in here. You start to write these things. I wrote all of these with zero templates. I didn't look at any other headlines. I didn't go to AOL or anything. This is just something that becomes a natural thing to do with practice. The same thing with writing the subject lines. But that doesn't mean that you can't use them as crutches. I'm against using templates for ads, because what happens is you don't have a hero's journey, or your story and your research doesn't fit, and the highlight of that template is not the most compelling reason to, you don't have the most, that the highlight of that is not the most compelling reason for someone to buy your product. What I told everybody to do is to cut up those ads between headlines and stuff like that and look at ones outside your industry. If I was to, if you turned around and said, when I sat down to write my first promo, all the copywriters laughed, but then all the sales started flooding in. That sounds cheeky, and it sounds, nobody in our industry is going to turn around and find that to be, great copy. They're just going to say, oh, you're just ripping off the old ad. But outside of the industry, okay, that doesn't mean that, to an industry that has never heard that ad before, or it's been so long they've completely forgotten it. So one of the great sources to look at headlines and their structures is actually very old magazines, actually mostly women's magazines. But looking at them, in fact, my buddy Sam and I were in a bookstore in New York, and we were picking up old Cosmopolitans, very, really old ones, and looking at the ads and how great the headlines were and the ads and stuff like that are. You can take your ad file and peruse it until you start getting the feel for writing things this way. Okay? And I'm hoping that that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and we'll see if I have any other notes of things I wanted to add. So now, between the subject line trick, between using the basic template of authority doing something newsy that's providing or bringing benefits, and between going through and using this and then taking all the elements that you have. Now, one other thing that you want to do, and this is another portion, and actually, I'm going to go back up real quick. You want to take these things, and then you want to actually, once you've decided them, and I'm sorry that I didn't do this previously. Like I said, it's the first lesson. Let's suppose that I decide that I'm going with top copy instructor. And then I decide that I'm going to, the main benefit is the fast track to the A list and writing better copy. Okay, and I eliminate one element, but I keep these elements. What you then want to do is put them on a table just like this with the elements you chose at the very top, and then come down and think of the other ways to say that exact same thing. And so, like, revealing could be exposing, could be unearthing, could be discovering. You're bringing out those power words. Okay. Um, brand new, brand spanking new, never before heard of. You come out with all of those things, and then you go with the one that you think is the most powerful and, gripping one of those. And then once you've done that, now you're rewording it the way you're doing it. Now, I didn't have to do that as much because after a lot of time, unfair advantage and slashing years off of, these things become something that you get used to writing even as you're doing it on the fly. But I could have kept going and going and going and going and going. That's not the point. The point is that once you have the basics, that's what you can do. But to make this stronger, you would take all of these, get rid of all the ones that you decided on, online marketers and stuff like that, and then say, what else do I want to do? Do I want to say that to website owners? Do I want to say email list owners? If I was going to go with online marketers. So you would get rid of each one of these. You would only put in the ones that you had decided were going to be critical for your situation. And then underneath, you would come up with different ways and different ways to phrase and different words that basically mean the same thing but have more punch. And that's another way to punch up those headlines. So I'm now ready to take questions on headline training. Let me go to the very back. I don't know what our delay is like, but I'm hoping that this has been valuable for you. And there is one more tactic for headline training that I'm going to teach you, and it relates to the bullets, so it's going to be in the bullet training. Okay? Again, speaking of bullets, it reminds me that, when you take those benefits, don't forget the benefit of the benefit. So, you could say fast track. You put you on the fast track to writing A-level copy, so that you can start earning $50,000 an ad faster than everybody starting at your level. Okay, benefit of the benefit, and I'm going to go and explain a lot more about that when we study subject lines, or not subject lines, bullets. So between the subject line trick, this headline, the one headline formula I've given you inside, being able to take all of this and then kind of look at older headlines for the structure of them, that's 4. I'm going to be giving you a 5th one. And the 5th one is really powerful as well. And one of the ones that a top copywriter who charges, I think, $50,000 an ad has been using and said has been the giant game changer for his writing. Do I have any comments?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I hope you all like this. It's the first time.
Oh, okay. So the small words on the top, in parentheses, leave in, are less powerful part?
People still read it. They don't feel complete not reading it. I do pull in everything up there is something I consider to be powerful. I call that the lead-in headline. Because it leads into the headline. And so, yes, it's something that if I had more time to say in the headline or felt that it wasn't cramming it, I would leave in the headline. But I am pulling out what I think is less important. The benefit is more important. So I think sometimes I put the proof up there because I think the proof is the less important. Now, it's still vital. It's still critical. It's still super important. It's just less than the stuff that I left in the headline, in my opinion. And by the way, you can put one below too. Don't forget it. You could write, if you ended up writing a headline and you want to say everything and that whole headline ends up being a pretty big paragraph, you can do the lead in and then you can do another one right below the headline that's obviously bigger font than the main body copy, and everybody's going to read all of that. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How much time do you spend on headlines when writing an ad with them?
I don't spend that much time on headlines because you okay, it's one of those like subjective questions because it depends on the situation. But the headlines, what I'm doing is I'm looking for 3 great ones to test, the ones that make me go, oh, good. And in this case, I would be testing the slashing time off of the time off ones, and then depending on and a lot of things will become more clear. Like if I was promoting to the Gary Halbert group, I would be talking more about the hidden copywriting, Gary Halbert copywriting lessons, and so forth. The headlines don't take me that long to write, but I write a lot of them so that I can choose 3 really good ones. It is something that everybody else spends more time on than the rest of the copy, which is a giant mistake. And that's an important part to know, because I would say that the number 1 technique that you would say most copywriters learn first is headline writing. But they are still doing their research, walking on the beach, driving around in their cars, coming up with a good headline, which is better than just staring at a blank screen saying, I got to write something today. And still better than somebody who's pulling out, I've got to write this ad for a furniture company and pulling out furniture ads, trying to imitate those. So, and the reason because of these systems, I spend less time doing it. So you want to spend I would say, but the headlines, the headlines are super important for getting that attraction. And the 3 main things that you want to test are the headlines, the hooks, or the interest, the part that reels them in. So that's very related to the headlines. And 3, offers. Once you have decided on those, you need to then spend more time into the story, the body copy, the bullets, and so forth. And we will talk about putting it all together. What's the best order to write all this stuff in? It is different for different people. Some people, Kevin and I, think in headline form because we have sat around and listened to client after client after client tell our father the ins and outs of their business and say what will be good. But the headlines, I don't have to spend that much time doing it. And here's why. When you're doing the research and you find out, oh, this cream's made with the ingredient that they can only source on the eastern side of the Himalayas 3 months a year, and it's very limited in supply, we know that's a huge hook, right? And so that's probably going to end up being in the headline. And so after you're done doing the research, the headline shouldn't take you that much. I think if you're looking for a time factor, and again, the more experience you have, the faster you write these out. I spat these out real quick. I would say it's more important to say try writing 100 headlines, and 100 different headlines, not one headline that's the exact same. They should be as different as the headlines I was writing there. They should basically almost be like different hooks, and then take the 3 that you think are that have the highest pulling, and those are the ones that you want to test. So don't portion out half of your writing time for headlines. If you made me come up with a number, this is the way it works. 1/3 of your time is coming up with research. 1/3 is writing this first draft. It's the headlines and the bullets and doing that. And then the final 1/3 is in editing, where you're fixing these headlines and you're massaging them and you're fixing the bullets and you're rearranging things and creating the grease slide effect. Out of the writing time, out of the writing the first draft time, I would probably say about 1/4 of that time or 1/3 of that time should be used spending writing a whole bunch of headlines that you're then deciding upon. And that's because the stories and the bullets are also going to potentially change your headline, but they also can take quite a bit of time to write. I hope that answers the question, because it is a very subjective question. By subjective, I just mean it depends on the situation. Okay.
All right. Do Do you write the ad before the headlines or write the headlines first?
I will cover that. Everybody does it different. I think the first thing that I write is the most important factoids that I want, the important points that I want to get across. It will depend on what it is you're selling or what the situation is. Sometimes, and most of the time, it is best to actually write the the headlines first. Other times, I would say that you want to do is start off with the bullets first, and sometimes those bullets will give you the headline that you think is the better one. And So it's different for everybody, and we'll go through a whole training on putting it all together after I show you how to write, how to close the copy, how to make the offer, how to write ordering instructions, and all of this other stuff. We will put it all together in a way, but the answer is different for everybody. John Carlton writes the bullets first. Our father wrote the headlines first. I have often written the body copy first. And because I'm writing the body copy, and then boom, I hit the one line that really is the powerful one that I think needs to start the copy. I move all the copy at the top to the side, and then the headline is going to be a lot based on the body copy, making sure that it matches that. Now, the body copy in general, though, the main part of the body copy, like the bullets and the story and everything else, don't change that much. What I'm talking about hitting is the hook, and I hit that hook, and I'm like, oh, that's the hook. And so then I'll write the subject line or the headlines based on the hook that I've done, and I'll try and come up with 3, because you can easily create many headlines that will naturally bleed in, and the only thing you got to change is just how you phrase like that first paragraph, and then the rest of it flows. So it's going to be different for different people, and I'll show you that process in the different training. Next one.
All right. What adjustments would you make for VSLs?
For VSLs, and we will do a training just on VSLs, but one of the things about VSLs is they're much more casual, they're much more conversational. So one of the things that, like in editing, I do is I remove the times that I use the word twice. I had a headline here where I wrote Halbert twice because I was talking about Kevin and I was talking about our father, right? And I didn't want to use Halbert twice. I wouldn't care about doing that with a VSL. And with VSLs, you don't have to worry about word length nearly as much. You're like going ahead and you're saying things in a full-on paragraph. So I would be throwing everything into the VSL, not the headline, not the title. The title of the VSL has to just get people watching. And it can be as simple as, if you want to write great headlines, you need to watch this now because this is what everybody's going to be doing in 2022. Okay. Once you then get into the VSL, you say, look, my name is Bon Halbert, and I'm going to start showing you how to write headlines. And when I'm done, this is the people who are using this technique. This is what, and you throw everything under the sun in there to hook them in and get them reading, because you have their attention and where they're looking. I always say in the editing process, people are looking for a place to stop reading and feel safe that they're not missing out on something for promotions, not for fiction, but for promotions. With that place is always where they have finished what they think is a complete thought and a complete sentence and all that other stuff. So I teach you not to write with incomplete thoughts, using complete sentences, leaving some cliffhangers, setting some anchors, or setting some hooks to get you to read on further, promising what you're going to get, things like that. And you're doing the same thing with VSLs, but the place that they're going to feel, safe to stop watching is right when you finish saying something and take a pause. Okay. The great thing about VSLs is you can say a whole bunch of stuff really quick, get a whole bunch of information in, leave a bunch of factoids, set those anchors, and do everything else before pausing. And so the writing flow, what you're saying, what they need to hear, that has not changed one bit. The way you say it, the cadence of which you say it, how casual you get to be while saying it is what changes the actual copy. In fact, you do not want it to read so super smooth that there's no awe or sounds like somebody's like, stopping for half a second to think of the right word to say, because it sounds much more real if it's, raw like that. In fact, a lot of them, and I'm not saying guerrilla raw, like, you're putting something out on TV and and it's looks like it was filmed with an old VHC hand cam. But, they do want to, feel like, no, this is the best way to say it, and then say it, type of thing. So there's a much more casual flow to it. And the other thing for VSLs, I'm just going to give you this tip right now, is change your cadence. Go from talking faster than people normally would talk to speaking a little slower than the average person in conversation will talk. That's an acting trick that will help you gain more attention. And you can do the same thing with VSLs. And the great thing about VSLs is you have videos, so you can do demonstrations, you have proof, you can, some people are more charismatic on video than they, and people bond with them quite easily. There's all kinds of benefits. And we'll do a whole VSL training. Maybe we can pull in some top VSL people to help with the training as well, because we're going to start pulling in more people too in the trainings as well. I just wanted to kind of get on with giving you guys the basic nuggets of ads before we venture into little side strategies. And those are research, hooks, headlines, bullets, a little bit of story, but we're going to do a lot of story, and closes. Once you have all that, the little details, which all do make a difference and make you better, more professional, will, we can now talk about the strategy for VSL versus email copywriting versus, Facebook advertising and stuff like that. And because it is all different, and in each of your funnel gets different. You've got, very kind of clickbaity, you're just selling the click to get them to go to an editorial. The editorial style has got to be written a little bit more newsworthy like, or more like a blog post if that's where you're driving. And then pushing them into a very, landing pages need to be straight up sales scripts and things like that. And they all need to flow kind of with a uniform theme or hook, that in uniform USP, so that they're not feeling like they're jumping around and they're still trying to get the main benefit they got or wanted when they read the lead generating Facebook ad. Next one.
All right. Do you use the same techniques to write the deck copy?
No, the deck copy is not the same techniques. Basically, one of the techniques I'll tell you that makes it easier for you is I do it on the computer. I'm going to give you a little history here. My father, and excuse me if you've heard this before, he grew up in the age of typewriters that were mostly manual. And if you had an electric typewriter, you could only, you could only correct a few words on the one line you were already stuck on. So what he did was he would write copy, and then we took it to a place called Postal Instant Press, and a typist would type it all out. And then we would go over to what was Rock and Roll Denny's, but now is a different restaurant on Sunset Strip. We'd go to breakfast, and he would read the copy, and then he would make little edits or changes, very few, take it back and have it rewritten. Well, that was a very time-consuming process, and it was also expensive. So one of the things my father did was he was perfecting the entire pitch in his head from beginning to end. And so while you thought he was doing nothing while just walking on the beach, what he was doing was perfecting the headline all the way to the PS and knowing exactly what he wanted to say when and where. It wasn't agonizing over every single word, but he was basically formulating what would be an in-person sales pitch to a prospect. Then he would go and write it down, and people would be like, wow, he just sat down and wrote that whole thing out. They didn't understand his process and what was going on. Well, I grew up in the era of word processors, and that allows me to add, subtract, and everything. So my process is much more get all the things that I want to say down and then massage it, move it around, add things, cut things, decide and do things differently. But when it comes down to the deck copy, the main body copy, I'm just going to flow, flow, flow. I'm not necessarily going. I am following. Making sure the elements of Ada in there. But I could start off earlier describing something and giving reasons as to why this is a sense of urgency and you need to pay attention to it. Um, and it's not necessarily a template because it doesn't all have to be in that order, but I start writing and it's more free flow, free thinking, keep it going writing, and then it's all polished and done later. It is the least templated part of the process, and it's not necessarily a formula, but I'm going to show you how to do that and get it done well, because the professionalism, the part that it, the way that I'm going to show you, you want to think of copywriting more or less as sculpting, where, especially the body copy, where, when you're planning and you're doing the strategy, you're finding the subject matter that people want to see, what they want to see in the sculpture. You're deciding whether or not you're going to do Mary holding Jesus as a baby. And you're like, that's the subject matter that this, the buyer's really going to want. This is the main concept, and the real thing I'm really going to practice and get that the part that's going to draw everybody's attention is the look in her eye of the of Mary is going to, so her head is like, that's like the headline. I'm going to make sure that that's pretty well done, and then I'm sketched out the concept, and then when you actually go down to write the thing and put it together, that's the body copy, is the basic form, and the professionalism, the part that makes yours look so much better than all the other sculptors, is slowly adding a little piece here and editing and chipping out a way and making sure that the only thing left in there is everything that's amazing. And so think of the body copy and the whole ad as more of like that kind of process of sculpting. Another analogy would be like mining, where the research is figuring out where gemstones lie in the earth, and then doing the research process is also taking a big bulldozer and digging up a huge amount of that dirt so you don't miss anything, and then shaking and sifting through it, which is like the boring part of the research, until you find little nuggets and you're like, okay, there's a gem, there's a sapphire, there's a diamond, and everything. And then that's a rough thing, and then taking and selecting the best parts of that, and then taking those best parts, and then, okay, if I chip away this and chip away this and then this, I can get a perfect shape right within this. And then once it's shaved and cut and smoothed out right, it shines like a flashlight. And that's how you come up with a gem. It's another analogy for it. So it's a process, but when it comes down to the deck copy, I definitely do not use any kind of template. It's more of a free, I'm looking at the factoid list and knowing what it is I need to say, what's the most important part of what it is, but that's different under every situation. Sometimes the very first thing you got to do is get them over the fact that they're that they're skeptical, or the first part that is really important and the story is going to help me do that, or the first part is going to be they're not skeptical, it's I got to do the benefit and the USP part that shows them that it's different from anything anybody's offered before. Okay.
All right. So when there are several headlines in an ad, do you put the most impactful first, or do you only consider the headline the top of the ad and the others throughout are something different?
The others I only consider the top one to be the headline. And now again, the lead-in headline, the headline, and the one that's right below it are all the headline. Okay, like I explained a few minutes ago. The other ones are subheads, and they are designed in a specific way where they say that the way that I do this, and people do it differently. Sometimes the subheads are like little headlines. For me, what they are is usually like benefits or pieces of interest. And the way that the copy has to flow is that when people are reading, you have, I think it's 4 different types of readers. You have the OCD reader. They start reading and they're going to continue reading all the way through and read everything until they come to a spot that says, no, this isn't for me, and they turn the page of a newspaper, or they click off the website, or they shut down the email. Okay? And you got to keep them reading. The second group of people that you have reading it are, kind of scanning it, trying to decide if they're gonna read it. And that's when sense of urgency is kind of, needs to be pretty blatant in either a subhead or in the headline. And then what they're going to do is go back up, start reading from the top, and keep on going down. You have another group of people who are actually just going to read the headline, the bullets, and the offer at the end, decide and make their decision based on that. There are quite a few people who are just like, I'm a fast decision maker. It sounds good. You got a guarantee. I'm going to go for it. There's another group that actually scan the ad. They see a subhead, and the subhead is like why most models don't make it in the industry. And so that subhead, they go right from there, and then they start reading the rest of the ad from that point on. They don't read the entire ad, they just read from that subhead on. So the subheads, the way that I design it, is always so that they can read the ad, and as they're reading, if they are going from the top, the subhead makes sense because it's a continuation of the thought that's going from the front, and then the copy right after that subheadline continues. And so it's like a story that's continuing. So if you read it from before the subhead, you hit the subhead and read through, you don't feel any break. It's completely smooth. But if you came in at the subhead and started reading, it's also completely smooth from there, like a complete thought, and keeps on going down. And so the reason that people say that the headline, the bullets, and the close are, or PS sometimes is what they're saying, is the most important parts of the ad, is because there are a number of people who will buy just from that, or that's the parts that makes people decide to read through the ad to verify what you're offering is actually real. So those subheads are designed to also get you to read like a headline. That's why they call them subheads. And they mention other reasons that you would do it. So in the example I gave with the headline, let's suppose that I left out that I chose a different headline and I said the world's biggest direct response marketing agency is actually using these tricks. I might leave that, I might put that in a subhead. And then when writing this right before the subhead, and I'll say, if you don't think that this stuff is proven, there's one fact you should know about, ... Subhead, the world's biggest direct response company is using these tricks with massive success. And then the copy right after that's going to say something along the lines of, there's a giant well-known corporation that everybody in direct response has heard of, and several of their copywriters had learned these tricks from Von Halbert and have been using them to stay ahead of the competition. So the way that reads is that reads fluidly and smoothly all the way through, and it also reads smoothly if you came in just at the subhead and started coming down. Okay, next question.
All right. What is the subject line trick? Was that in a different training?
Yeah, the subject line trick, and it's a great headline process. And by the way, you can take the headline process. Okay, this is very important. I'm glad you asked that. It's in the email marketing. It's under units called strategy, and it says email marketing. It's if you're on a desktop, it's on the upper left-hand side. You'll see a unit section. If you're on a phone, it's on the top and says units. You click on the strategies, you'll see an email marketing strategy. It's also called the online A-pile speech, and it's in there. By the way, you can take that lesson and make it better by looking at this lesson and saying, okay, what else do I want to add to that? That's a great headline, but I think I need a little more authority, or I think I need a little bit more of that. And do exactly what I explained, which is, this is the authority I want to use. Come up with 10 different ways that you think you could say the same thing about that authority, and choose the one that you think is the best, and you can punch up those headlines with that. So that is something you do not want to miss. That training alone will have you writing, and it's a cure for writer's block. See, that's the one thing that I'm trying to explain is, when you use this matrix that I taught you here, if you use the other subject line trick or you use them in conjunction with each other, what's going to happen is you're going to be like, if you're at a big company and they say, hey, to the copywriting team, I want you guys to go off and write headlines. They're going to go off and stare at their screen and, come back in an hour with like 4 headlines, and they're going to be 4 headlines that they stole from their swipe file. You're going to be able to come back with headline after headline after headline after headline. I think I wrote the headlines, all the headlines you saw me do. I think that took 15 minutes or less. Imagine spending an hour or two doing it. So do not miss that training, even if you think that you're not into email marketing or you won't need it, which you do. But even if you don't believe that's of use, do that and go through it, because I can't tell you how many testimonials I have from people who use that trick to increase their open rates and use it to write copy more compelling and get better hooks than copywriters that they're in competition with.
Okay. Can this also be applied to book titles, subtitles?
This can be applied to book titles. Again, what I would do is pay attention to what your goal is with the book. If your book is to get book sales, people haven't heard of you, proof is more important. They want to benefit out of it. This is for the non. This is only nonfiction, and yes, this is a system I would use for book title and the headline for a book description. Your book description should read like an ad, and the title itself is going to be extremely benefit heavy. They're expecting to get the curiosities built in because they're expecting to get those benefits in the book. But the same type of thing, 13 proven ways, and you have to decide what you want to put in and what you don't. But I would be considering all of those same elements in the book title, and absolutely can be used for that. And again, can also be used for blog post titles, and can be used for the editorial or advertorial copy that you write for VSL titles, and for all of that. It's just some things need to be shorter. One of the things that you do have to recognize in the world of direct marketing is different mediums have different limitations on how much space you have to say something and to do something. Book titles are usually not 40 words long. Okay, but that just means what's the most valuable things to do. One of the most famous books was 7 Steps to Freedom. Our dad's book, How to Make Maximum Money in Minimum Time, and stuff like that. Sometimes, they are. Oh, I came across this book and that sounded something like something I might be interested in. It got them to go read the description. The description has a headline just like the ones that we were writing. That sucked them in. They read the description about what's in the book and they bought from there. So yes, these everything I'm going to teach you in marketing basically is going to be stuff that you're going to be able to use throughout all the elements of marketing. You're not going to stop because, okay, now we insert the average ordering instruction. No, we're actually going to use a lot of these concepts in all kinds of different ways. Okay.
That was the last question.
Okay, that was the last question. I hope you all enjoyed this. Again, this is the first time I've ever gone through this process in a thorough manner. And we are going to have a few more strategy lessons because I want to start doing some more theory in marketing, so that, because I got 2 real goals for everybody in the group, which is to get you to have marketing vision lenses, see the world through marketing eyes the way that Kevin and I do. And because that opens up all kinds of opportunities, you see them left and right, how to, prioritize projects, because, you're going to end up with so many ideas and opportunities that you got to figure out which one's the right one for you, understanding how it works as a numbers business, things like that. But the other part, though, just as equally, is specifically how to write great copy. And I think that, you need both of those. And so the I will announce what the next training is going to be. But if you really did like this training, um, do me one favor. Please go tell the world that you got a great training from the Halber brothers. I like other people to know that they that we really do give a thorough in-depth training, and it's not like a lot of people who are telling you what to do but don't show you how to do it. Again, I explained that with the research video. My whole thing is when I'm done speaking, I want you to be able to go down to the grab your pen and paper and just write and write and write and write and do the things that you need to do, and know it all. So Emma and I will put together the form so that you remember these things, and we'll put it into a PDF document and put it up into the files. So I want everyone to have a wonderful day, and again, I really hope you like this.